Welcome to Global Glimpses, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. In global trade, the way countries pay for what they buy is as crucial as the goods themselves. Payment methods can shape alliances, shift power balances, and even influence the global economy. Every transaction is a piece of a much larger puzzle, where currency choices reflect deeper strategies and national interests. Recently, Russia, a major global energy supplier, stopped accepting Indian rupees for its oil exports, disrupting established trade flows. India, suddenly needing a new way to pay for vital oil imports, turned to the Chinese yuan. This was both a surprising and significant move, given the complex relationship between India and China. This isn't just a simple currency swap. It's a signal of shifting alliances and a direct challenge to the traditional dominance of the US dollar in global trade. India's appetite for Russian oil grew rapidly as Western sanctions hit Moscow, allowing India to buy discounted crude and strengthen its energy security. For a while, India and Russia experimented with settling payments in their local currencies, bypassing the dollar. But as trade volumes soared, this arrangement became unsustainable. Russia's October 2025 announcement abruptly ended this system, leaving Indian refiners scrambling to find alternatives and keep oil supplies flowing. The solution emerged quickly. India's state-owned refiners began paying for Russian oil in yuan, as Moscow required, marking a dramatic shift in payment practices. This marks a historic first. India, often at odds with China, now uses its rival's currency to buy oil from Russia, highlighting the complex realities of global trade. The move has deep geopolitical implications, connecting energy security, national rivalries, and the global push to reduce dollar dependence. It's a new chapter in the story of international finance. India's use of the yuan is a real-world example of de-dollarization, a growing trend among major economies seeking to diversify away from the dollar's influence. This decision is about more than oil. It's a sign of a changing world order where economic pragmatism and shifting alliances are redrawing the map of global power. As India adapts to new realities, pragmatism and geopolitics are colliding on the high seas of global trade, shaping the future of international commerce. Russia rejected the rupee because it isn't globally convertible. Billions of rupees from oil sales were stuck in Indian banks, unusable outside India. The rupee isn't a hard currency like the dollar or euro, making it impractical for large-scale trade. Russia's trade surplus with India meant it kept accumulating rupees it couldn't spend or convert. Managing these rupee accounts became a headache for Russian banks, with complex regulations and costly conversions. For Russia, accepting rupees was like holding a check that could only be cashed in one distant store. The rupee-based system was unsustainable for billions in trade, especially under sanctions. A currency's power lies in its global acceptance, not just the size of its home economy. Russia needed a currency it could use immediately, not one that sat idle. This practical need drove Moscow to demand a new payment solution. With rupees off the table, Russia turned to the Chinese yuan for its oil payments. The yuan is more liquid and globally traded than the rupee, and can be easily converted into rubles. This direct conversion streamlines transactions, making them faster and cheaper for Russian exporters. Previously, payments in other currencies required multiple conversions, adding costs and risks. The yuan eliminates these hurdles, offering efficiency and stability, crucial for a sanctioned economy. As Russia moves away from the dollar and euro, the yuan, backed by China's massive economy, is a natural reserve choice. Trading in yuan deepens Russia's financial ties with China and builds a non-dollar ecosystem. The yuan is more than a payment tool. It's a strategic asset for Russia's long-term goals. This shift simplifies trade, reduces risk, and strengthens the Russia-China partnership. For Moscow, the yuan is the logical choice for settling massive oil sales to India. The scale of India-Russia oil trade is staggering. In just a few years, the relationship has transformed, with India emerging as Russia's most important oil customer outside of China. Before 2022, Russia supplied less than 1% of India's crude oil. Most of India's oil came from the Middle East, with Russia barely registering on the import charts. But after the Ukraine war and sweeping Western sanctions, India seized the chance to buy discounted Russian oil, which was suddenly available in huge quantities at bargain prices. Russia is now India's largest oil supplier, providing over 1.7 million barrels per day, about 35 to 40% of India's total oil imports. This is a dramatic shift in global energy flows. In September 2025 alone, India imported $2.5 billion worth of Russian oil, a figure that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. This trade is vital for India's energy security and economic growth, helping to keep fuel prices stable for its vast population and powering its industries. The sheer volume made the payment issue urgent. Billions in monthly transactions couldn't be settled in rupees, and Western sanctions made dollar payments risky. The yuan solution isn't a minor experiment. It's about sustaining one of the world's biggest new energy trade flows, and it signals a shift in how global oil deals might be settled in the future. While yuan payments are still a small share, the precedent is set and likely to grow as both countries look for alternatives to the dollar. Indian refiners are now equipped for yuan payments, and Russian suppliers are increasingly demanding it, making the process smoother and more routine. This trade is a testing ground for non-dollar payment systems that could reshape global energy markets and redefine how countries do business in the years ahead. India's yuan payments for Russian oil are part of a global trend, De-Dollarization. For decades, the US dollar dominated global trade, giving America immense leverage. Now countries, especially BRICS members, are seeking alternatives to reduce dollar dependence and avoid US sanctions. Russia, cut off from the dollar system, is leading this shift out of necessity. India, while close to the US, values its autonomy and is willing to use the yuan when practical. This isn't just anti-Western sentiment, it's about securing energy and stable prices. The goal isn't to replace the dollar, but to create a multipolar currency world. Every non-dollar transaction, like India's yuan payments, builds the infrastructure for this new system. The dollar's dominance is eroding, making way for a more complex global financial landscape. Using the yuan for major trade would have been unthinkable for India just a few years ago. India and China have a history of border disputes and strategic mistrust, with relations hitting a low after a 2020 clash. But in 2025, a diplomatic thaw began. Direct flights resumed and Prime Minister Modi visited China for a key summit. These high-level talks lowered tensions and made practical cooperation possible. The improved climate gave India political cover to use the yuan, despite domestic sensitivities. Without this thaw, adopting the yuan would have faced fierce opposition. The shift shows how economic necessity can override rivalry, at least temporarily. The yuan payment decision was made possible not just in boardrooms, but through careful diplomacy. Paying for Russian oil in yuan solves one problem for India but creates another. India already has a $100 billion annual trade deficit with China, buying far more than it sells. Now, India must buy even more yuan to pay Russia, increasing its dependence on its main rival. India holds little yuan in reserve, so it must use its dollar stockpile to buy the Chinese currency. This means spending hard currency to support the yuan's global rise, an uncomfortable position for India. The reliance on yuan introduces a strategic vulnerability. If tensions flare, China could use its currency as leverage. India's pursuit of energy security now strengthens China's global ambitions. India faces a tough choice: affordable oil or greater dependence on the yuan. This dilemma highlights the complex trade-offs in today's interconnected world. How India manages this will shape its economic and foreign policy for years to come. India's yuan payments for Russian oil are a strategic win for China. Beijing has long sought to internationalize the yuan, and now even a rival like India is boosting its use. This move legitimizes the yuan in global trade and increases its demand outside China's direct sphere. Every Indian purchase of yuan for oil strengthens the currency's value and stability. The yuan is now a key player in energy markets, a sector once dominated by the dollar. China gains influence without making concessions. Circumstances handed Beijing a win. The yuan's role in India-Russia trade cements China's financial influence across Asia and BRICS. Economic power and financial infrastructure are proving as influential as military might. India's switch to yuan for Russian oil is more than a technical change, it's a symbol of a new financial order taking shape before our eyes. This move is not just about convenience or cost, it's a statement about shifting alliances and the willingness of major economies to challenge the status quo. It shows that when the stakes are high, countries can and will bypass the dollar, creating visible cracks in its long-standing dominance. The world is watching as these cracks widen, wondering how far this trend will go. The US loses some leverage as more trade shifts to other currencies, weakening sanctions as a tool and reducing its ability to shape global events through financial pressure. This shift could have ripple effects on international politics and economics. The India-Russia-China triangle signals the end of a unipolar financial era and the rise of a multipolar system, where power is more evenly distributed and alliances are constantly evolving. For the global south, this offers both autonomy and new dependencies. Escaping the dollar means forging new ties to the yuan and navigating a more complex web of economic relationships. It's a chance for some countries to assert more control, but also a risk of new vulnerabilities. The future may be about choosing between spheres of influence, not true independence. Nations will have to weigh their options carefully, balancing old partnerships with emerging opportunities. This story is a microcosm of 21st century power competition, pragmatism, rivalry, and the search for security in a world where alliances shift and economic interests collide. The global financial map is being redrawn through practical, incremental decisions that, over time, could fundamentally reshape how the world does business. The consequences are still unfolding, but one thing is clear: the era of a single dominant currency is fading, and a new chapter in global finance is beginning. This trade deal is a key signpost of the new, unpredictable financial world ahead, one where adaptability, strategic choices, and resilience will matter more than ever before.